can't think of any more human activity than conducting science experiments.
The game I play is a very interesting one. It's imagination in a tight straitjacket.
The beauty of a living thing is not the atoms that go into it, but the way those atoms are put together.
What I always think should be the basis of education is not answers, but questions. We should teach kids how to question.
Welcome to Blabcoats. My name is Amit Siddiqui. In this abridged episode, Brooke talks to us about her journey into psychology and the stigmatization that exists regarding mental health issues. To listen to the full episode, go to blabcoats.com and subscribe to our podcast. So you're interested in how people think.
Yep.
Did you associate that with science?
No, so this sounds really bad, but in high school, I totally hated science and it was my least favorite subject alongside maths. And I hated every minute of it. I didn't engage at all in class. I just talked and passed notes and I was really naughty. I hated science. I couldn't wait to not do science again when I was in high school, which is not great, but yeah.
So you had no idea that psychology was a branch of science? Well,
I don't think I'd ever really been exposed to psychology. I don't think I really knew that much about what it was at that point in my life. I think psychology, even in the last 10 years, has kind of become more well-known in popular culture. But when I was in high school, I kind of had heard of it a bit, but I hadn't really super had it mentioned around me or anything, so I don't think I really gave much thought to it. Yeah.
So what further developed your interest in psychology? You mentioned year 11, year 12, that's when you started considering it?
Yeah, so I think for me it was quite personal. At that point in my life, I was having a really tough time with depression, and I think that experience and kind of what happened to me during that period of time really made me feel wow, I think I'm really interested in this and I want to understand why that happened to me and why it happens to other people. And I think I, at that point in my life, hadn't really had a great exposure, I guess, with the mental health kind of community. It wasn't so positive at that point in my life. And so I kind of felt wow, I think this sounds really arrogant, but I was I feel like I could do a better job. Yeah.
Oh, wow. So it's having those mental health issues or depression early on at that formative years that inspired you to try to understand why that was happening, and if you could help others who are going through that as well. Yeah,
totally. Because again, I think, I don't know, at that point in time, I feel like people weren't really talking about it as much as they do maybe now. I think there's still a lot of room to go, but I felt quite isolated in that point in time. And so I started seeking out information about psychology, I guess, and started to become really fascinated by it in general.
Was there a stigmatization of people who had mental health? I know that exists to a certain degree. So if you break your arm, people are oh, go see a doctor, right? They can physically see there's something wrong with you. But as soon as it comes to the brain, people have this prejudice where rather than trying to understand, they go to judge.
Yeah, totally. I think I felt that really acutely when I was in high school, at times where I've had a physical health problem before, everyone's kind of we'll help you, what's wrong, we'll come and support you. And when it's a mental health kind of thing, things are different. And it's a lot harder, I think, to kind of get that support from people around you, whether it be because of stigma and prejudice. And also I think because we don't talk about it openly, I think a lot of people don't know what to say, and they're worried they're going to say the wrong thing.
Do you think what do you think has, why do you think there is this stigma about mental health? Is it because we just can't see it?
Yeah, I think that's probably one of the reasons. I think because we can't see it physically in front of us, what it looks like. I think often people then kind of perceive it as being less legitimate.
Right.
I don't know. I think that's perhaps one of the reasons. I don't know. And I think it's hard to understand because you can't see it too. So, like, I think, as you said, if you've got a broken arm or something, everyone can say, like, oh, God, that sucks. You broke your bone. That must have hurt. But I think until you've, or someone you know or love, someone in your family has had a mental health kind of experience, I think it's harder in some ways to understand it and to see where that person's coming from. Yeah,
I totally see that. We had our guest from episode 4, Daniel Hochstrasser. I can't even pronounce his name properly, but it's always difficult. But he was inspired to take psychology because around that formative years, so 15, 16, his father started to develop bipolar.
Yeah.
Which is a mental health issue as well. But he was put on this path he, similar to your story, he hated science.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's so interesting. That's
funny.
He was into drama,
yeah,
into music, in acting, in literature, but he absolutely hated science. It was only when he started seeing the application of it, when he realized that I could use science to answer questions that I had in my own mind, that he started to value it.
Yeah, totally.
Was that a similar thing for you?
Yeah, definitely. I think the way science was taught in my high school, and I don't know about other high schools, but it wasn't. We didn't talk about how science can be applied to different problems in real life and how much it helps people. And so my memories of science in high school was kind of like, go and memorize this periodic table that's really, really boring, and we're not going to tell you why that's important, or
how it could be used.
Yeah, just like open up the textbook and answer the questions in the textbook. And I kind of was like, well, I don't care about like memorizing a random element in chemistry. Like, how's that going to help me? And I think that's one of the failings, I think, of current science education. I think if we can kind of show people how helpful it is, and how you can apply it and how you can use it, and how it's been used to solve so many really important problems, I think a lot of more people are not going to kind of drift away. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I totally agree with you. Was there a specific a memory that you can recall where you had like this realization of how science could be utilized, or the utility of it, or when your attitude started to change? So you mentioned it was during your 15, 16, when you're going through depression. Was it that moment that you realized maybe psychology is interesting for me, and I see the utility of it, or was it later on in your journey?
I think at that point, it kind of was the first point where I seriously started considering, like, hey, this is actually interesting, and I'm really interested in understanding this further. But I don't think it was until university when I started, going to lectures and tutorials and things like that, and really kind of delving into it, that I was like, wow, like, this is really awesome, and this is really incredible what people have done. And I think at that point, I really started to gain a further appreciation for science. And I guess in psychology, you start learning about as part of it anyway, the biological components of the brain and things like that. And I think it wasn't until university for me that I really started to gain a appreciation for how science, I don't know, is so helpful in the community. And
Thanks for listening to Blab Codes. Rate and review our podcast on iTunes or wherever you get your podcast, because it does help us spread the word. And if you like what we're doing here, then help us grow it by sharing this with a friend of a friend, or your mailman, even your mailman's mailman. We also want to hear from you, so send us questions or comments to blabcodes@gmail.com. And if you have any interesting questions or comments, then we'll talk about it on air.